Okay, today we're going to get into our final section of chapter 26, which is section 4, and it's entitled 19th Century Progress. Now remember, that means in the 1800s. When we say 19th century, that's talking about the 1800s. It's a pretty short section, so we should be able to go through this in a rather expedited fashion. Roman numeral 1 says inventions make life easier. The internal combustion engine was invented in the late 1800s, and it ran on a new source of energy at the time, which was gasoline. Now, you know that gasoline is made from oil. A second source of energy was also discovered in the form of electricity. So these two things made life very different. A lot of new inventions were coming out to utilize those two new sources of energy. Thomas Edison was a famous American inventor during this time. He had patents for over 1,000 inventions, including the light bulb and the phonograph, which was a sound recording device. One important invention that he doesn't get much credit for is Menlo Park, New Jersey. His research laboratory was staged there, and it was probably his greatest invention because of all of the great things that came out of it and the tools that were used inside of the lab that helped develop some of these great inventions. Now, he did have help from many other scientists and researchers, including one named Lewis H. Latimer, who was an African American inventor that was really influential in a lot of Edison's work. Capital letter C is going to talk about two researchers and inventors from foreign lands. You have, one of them is from Italy and the other one is still local, but Bell and Marconi. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone in 1876, and then Guglielmo Marconi built the world's first radio in 1895. Marconi was from Italy, as I said earlier. Capital letter D, the famous Henry Ford. The car or automobile was actually first developed in Germany during the 1880s by Carl Benz. The first cars were extremely expensive because they were built entirely by hand. Henry Ford was an American mechanic that basically is famous for revolutionizing the way that cars were made. He used Eli Whitney's idea of standardized interchangeable parts on cars and developed the assembly line, which is a line of workers who each put on a single piece of unfinished cars as they pass along on a moving belt line. We should be very accustomed to the ideas of the assembly line and factories here near Detroit. The Wright brothers, capital letter E, they were actually bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio. They built the first gas-powered flying machine in 1903. The first flight took place in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and it only lasted about 59 seconds. Roman numeral 2 says new ideas in medicine. This is very important right now. The germ theory of disease was discovered by a Frenchman named Louis Pasteur in the mid 1800s. He comes to the conclusion that it's bacteria that causes disease. He also figures out that heat kills bacteria, and this process became known as pasteurization. It was named after him when he discovers it. It's the process of killing germs in liquids such as milk. So when you go to the store, when all of this is over, you might find something called pasteurized milk. That would be milk that has been basically changed because it has been heated to kill the bacteria. Next one is Joseph Lister. He was actually a British surgeon. He performed work on patients and he figured out that, hey, it's probably bacteria that is causing over half of my surgical patients to die due to infection. He started to keep his surgical areas spotless clean and used antiseptics to wash and treat wounds. These methods then began to keep about 85% of his patients alive. And this was the development of Listerine. That's an antiseptic that we use for mouthwash today. That was one of the inventions that came out of the work of Joseph Lister. Now, these inventions and developments were very crucial because these discoveries meant public health was improved and cities began to install things like plumbing and sewer systems to improve hygiene and cleanliness. There's only a bit left here. Let's move on down to point number 4. Medical researchers also developed vaccines for things like typhoid fever, typhus, diphtheria, yellow fever, and all other deadly diseases that they could utilize vaccines for. New ideas in science were abundant based on all of these movements, and we had Charles Darwin's theory of evolution come into play. Charles Darwin was an English naturalist. Now, naturalists are people who study nature and scientific methods to take a look at the things that happen in nature. And He began to question the diversity of animals being created entirely by God, which was a theory called special creation. Based on his research during a voyage on the HMS Beagle, this was a ship, an expedition ship, Darwin developed a theory that all forms of life, including humans, evolved from earlier forms that existed millions of years ago. In 1859, he published a book titled On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. In this book, he argues that the members of a species that actually survive are the fittest or most adapted to their environment. And these species' offspring benefit from having the most fit adaptations. This is known as the theory of evolution or survival of the fittest. Darwin is credited with that. There were some other naturalists that were working on similar ideologies, but this idea of having certain adaptations that allow you to survive. For example, the color of birds' feathers. Birds that blend in with trees with more brown and orange in them, maybe a little bit more green, may have a better chance of surviving than, let's say, birds that draw the eye of a predator. Maybe they're orange or bright red. So these are some of the things that would kind of stamp out some of those adaptations that weren't creating the most fit for survival. These are some of the arguments of Charles Darwin. And then all of these type of things that are going on, the changes in health, the changes in education, the changes in science, the inventions that led to what's called the rise of mass culture. Mass culture is the appeal of art, writing, music, and other forms of entertainment to a much larger audience, hence the word mass. Okay, that is the final section of chapter 24. You do not have to worry about these review questions. That's going to be something that I'll cover in the review sheet. So you'll see a review sheet coming to you here rather soon on the gradebook, and that will be an assignment. And then we will wrap up this chapter on Wednesday, the 8th, which will be your quiz for chapter 26. Then we'll be on Easter break. I want you guys to enjoy that break and spend some time with your close family. Be safe and be careful. Keep it home if you can. Otherwise, guys, if you have any questions for me, please let me know. Thank you.